Do we
Oh,
have
there's
anybody
somebody,
joined us?
yeah. Let me make sure she can hear us. Dawn, can you hear us?
Did you say my name?
Yes, just testing to make sure you can hear us.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then that works. And we're set.
Since the meeting hasn't started yet, I just want to say I love that everyone is sitting around a table together. This is how it used to be with the Sustainability Advisory Board back in at the community center in South Park. So it's a better way to communicate, I think.
Shall we start?
Yeah, okay, we're good on time and we've got everyone.
Okay, so we're going to start the meeting, and you've got some things you need to introduce.
Yes, let me go over some housekeeping items. So good evening. I'm Kathy Richardson, the city's sustainability director. A few housekeeping items for tonight's Zoom meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. Please remember to mute yourself during the meeting when you're not speaking. The chat function for this public meeting is disabled. All chats will go directly to me. We don't have any board members on Zoom. They're all present, so I'll skip that part. And then the city reserves the right to mute people or turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. Now I'll turn the meeting back to you, Nancy.
Great. Do you have the agenda you could put up?
Yes.
So I believe the first item on the agenda is approving the minutes of the last meeting. I hope everybody got a chance to take a look at those. Any suggestions, or do we approve them as is? Suggestions?
Motion to approve as is.
Second.
All right, all in favor of the motion as the minutes?
Aye.
Against? Sustained? No. All in favor? Okay, so the next item on the agenda is public comment.
Do you want to just read or do you want me to read?
Would you read it?
Yeah, the public may speak to any items or issues except for those scheduled on the agenda after first being recognized by the chair. And the public comment on the agenda items will be received during the meeting. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes for public comment on any one topic.
Okay. So Dawn, you're the only one here. Would you like to make any public comments?
So this is the time to make comments on anything that is not already on the agenda, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just am popping in to request that the group that I've been working with that calls themselves Save the Wakarusa River Valley, that was formed in opposition to the proposed development called the New Boston Crossing. That's basically adjacent to the Baker wetlands, the Haskell Baker wetlands. This group has been working a long time on this issue and would like an opportunity to come before this board to provide some education and background into some of the things that have happened in this process. And just basically, I'm making a request to make a presentation from, we call ourselves Swerve, at your next meeting.
Okay, Dawn, we put on the agenda how we want to handle outside group presentation requests. That's the third item on our agenda, so we'll be talking about that. And subsequent to that discussion, we can talk about yours in particular, okay?
Sounds good. I just wanted to make sure that I was able to voice that. Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks, Dawn. Okay, I don't think there's anybody else on, is that correct?
Yeah, just check, no one else.
Okay, so the next item is to discuss the KPI prioritization. And Kathy, you're going to give us an update on that, please.
Sure. And this is more of a conversation with you all, not a presentation from staff. So I know that this board, Environmental Sustainability Advisory Board, needs to align with our strategic plan, our environmental sustainability commitment. At the last meeting we had, there was some conversation of prioritizing some goals for this board. I also heard, where staff prioritizing some of the work of the strategic plan, just so that we're kind of working together on moving the needle on the same KPIs and such. And so I had been keeping Nancy kind of in the loop of these next steps that we've been working on as staff, and I think that it's helpful for me to share the staff perspective and where we're headed with KPI priorities, so that maybe this board, can provide feedback to me and to our executive team, and then kind of work alongside with staff on those key priorities. So we started back at the end of last year with each commitment champion. And again, if some of you I know are new to the strategic plan, but we have here on the website, our outcome groups are listed on here. This is the work that the city's in the business to do, Connected City. And then the commitments are how we do that work. So community engagement, efficient and effective processes, equity and inclusion, sound fiscal stewardship, engaged and empowered teams, and environmental sustainability. So I don't want to go too far back with, again, some of these discussions we've already had, but I just wanted to remind you of what those commitments are. So each one of these commitment champions was kind of tasked with having conversations with our outcome champions. So for example, for me as the sustainability director and the champion of environmental sustainability, I got to meet the champion of, unmistakable identity, safe and secure, connected city, et cetera. So those are some of our, bigger departments like MSO, Municipal Services and Operations Department, and Parks and Rec and Cultural Department. They just changed their name. So we had the task to meet with those outcome champions and identify kind of key priority KPIs. It's kind of strange to think of, these are already key priorities for the city, but we're even going another level up to say, of all of these, because there's way too many, what are we even pushing forward more to focus on, right? So we were asked to choose 1 to 3 and, have those discussions with the outcome champions and see if they kind of agree, and that we could end up meeting with some agreement of which ones those are. All the commitment champions at this point have met with outcome champions, right? And now the process is that those are still a lot of KPIs, by the way, because most didn't just choose one priority. I wasn't going to choose one. I wanted 3, right, to push forward. This is all of them are great work that are going to be challenges for the city and take a lot of resources, so we understand that. So the next step is really to make sure that now that everybody's kind of picked their top priorities, having another conversation with outcome champions as a whole, and then the city as a whole executive team. So as you all can imagine, if I want, 2 of my priority KPIs to be within Connected City, and all the other 5 commitment champions also chose 2 priority KPIs within Connected City for their areas, Connected City would have 12 KPIs they have to prioritize, and the other outcome champions would not have, very many, right, that are kind of coming up to focus area. So I think there's going to be some discussion on that too, because the whole point of this is, and as you all know, and we've talked about this from the start, it's overwhelming to move the needle on every single one of these KPIs this year. You know, if I set myself the goal of, as sustainability director, that I'm going to make progress on every single KPI that's environmental sustainability this year, I mean, I'm really kind of not being realistic. So we want to prioritize, but we also then want to balance out some of this work and make sure that we're all kind of on the same page. Those priorities will then, you know, move on to being shared in conversations with our city commission. As you all know, we continuously have update meetings, update presentations, at city commission meetings regarding our strategic plan, whether it's in an outcome or a commitment area. So I was hoping that by this meeting, the city was already going to kind of be settled with what those top key KPIs are, and that, you know, I could share which ones were definitely moving forward for environmental sustainability, and this board could talk about that and see how you could align with that. As you know, you're a policy board, so I mean, we'd love to brainstorm policy that would move the needle on these focused KPIs. So I was hoping that we'd be there. We're not there yet. I know that the decision is going to happen sooner than later, because as you all know, the work of prioritization also is aligned with our budget. So we already started working on our 2026 budget, and in order to you know, make sure that the key priority or the focused areas you know, kind of lend themselves to being in the pot of money or the budget where we definitely want to spend budget to move the needle on those areas versus the ones that stay behind for, you know, maybe a couple years or so to be worked on. So the budget is completely and totally in tune with our strategic plan. It has been since the beginning. We score things, you know, program areas by commitments and you know, whether they show up on our strategic plan and so forth. So there will be a decision soon. Hopefully, I know that you meet the fourth Thursday of each month. So in February, I think it's the 27th is that next meeting where I can tell you for sure which ones are moving forward. But in the meantime, I am going to tell you the ones that I discussed with our outcome champions, and all of them were very agreeable with 3 KPIs that were selected for environmental sustainability. Again, through this prioritization process, maybe 1 or 2 of them will drop off. But I did want to go through those with you all and have a conversation about why those 3 seem to be good timing to work on. And you all might have some background in some of these. You might already start brainstorming what we can do to really kind of advance in these areas. So any questions so far? I know that sounded very confusing as to all these meetings that are happening between these groups and eventually going to the whole executive team to, you know, finalize what our top KPIs will be, but hopefully it wasn't too confusing. But soon we'll know what those top ones are and can kind of move forward. But for this meeting, I did tell Nancy and Chris that, hey, I can share these and we can still have a conversation about them, knowing that maybe 1 of these or 2 of these will drop off. So in strong welcoming neighborhoods, we have a KPI that has no data or metric. This is a new KPI. It's % of municipal solid waste that is recycled or composted. So basically it's a waste reduction measure, right? How can we divert waste from ending up in the landfill? This KPI was actually one that was discussed quite heavily with the former Sustainability Advisory Board. It's new. It wasn't part of the original strategic plan, but the former board did recommend this to the city commission and to the city manager about adding this KPI, as it seemed like it was a gap within the strategic plan, and then something that the former board heard a lot about from our community members. There was already some work being done in this area, like the plastic bag ban that the former board was working on, and so forth. So this is one that I picked to prioritize, or to kind of step up. And the reason for this one is there's a lot of tie-ins. So number one is our Municipal Services and Operations Department, which houses our solid waste division. So they have begun the process of a consultant-led solid waste master plan. So this will, take some time, but back in December, the City Commission did approve the negotiated contract or agreement with Burns and McDonnell, is who was selected, and then kind of the scope of the work that we're going to be going through. And within this, the solid waste master plan, there's more than just waste reduction within that process. Like, we are going to be looking at efficiency and route collection, stuff like that. But a big part of a solid waste master plan is how do we continue to divert waste from the landfill? How do we make sure that these are resources that can be used for something else? Like, can we divert food waste, for example? We have a great yard waste collection program and a composting facility, but the city has not stepped into, other than a pilot that we did with food waste, so it's kind of that study of what it would take to do that, right? So if we collected from residential or commercial, the expansion of our recycling program, our single stream recycling program, into the commercial side. So currently we have a corrugated cardboard recycling program that's been going on since the 90s, and it's very successful at collecting a lot of material. And, a lot of businesses have been asking for recycling all the other components of materials that they generate at their facilities. So it aligns with the work and the resources that are being put together right now that have been approved, that there's budget money for. So that's always a good thing. As you all know, my sustainability budget is tiny. So this is, again, solid waste is an enterprise fund, so it's not general fund money, but they've been able to plan for and have within their budget the funds to run this solid waste master plan.
I have a question about this. So has the wording of this been approved by the city commission, or is this still in process?
It's not gone to city commission. There are some KPIs, as I mentioned last meeting, that are still being tweaked, or some wording changes. So it is my understanding, I'm not sure exactly how the process will go, but it's my understanding that all of them will be presented kind of at the same time, all the changes.
Okay, because I wanted to suggest that we not just have percent reduction through recycling and composting, but reducing municipal solid waste, including, but not only, through increased recycling and composting. So, for instance, with the plastic bag ban, we're neither recycling or composting, we're preventing that from being waste. And so there's other items that could be dealt with in the same manner.
So waste prevention.
Or waste reduction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, through prevention, recycling, and composting.
Yeah, this is exactly the type of feedback that I'm looking for. So if you have any feedback on the way something's worded, it doesn't make sense to you, or you think of something that would sound a little bit better, or anything to do with like the measurement, the EPA does have like guidelines on how to measure recycling rate for a community, or diversion rate, they call it too. I think we have like a standard. This is another thing that, I look for in some of the KPIs. There's really no like measurement tool, but some do have pretty good, clear guidelines on how to measure some of these activities, so.
Does the EPA rate include diversion at the household level rather than just the city level? Does it provide for that? Like if we were to propose policies of household waste reduction or diversion in composting,
So,
would that be included in the EPA metric, or would that have to be a separate?
yes, so this percent of municipal solid waste, I should clarify, municipal solid waste doesn't mean the City of Lawrence operations solid waste.
Okay.
So we always talk about MSW. MSW, municipal solid waste, is all the solid waste or the trash that's generated by the whole community.
Yeah.
Except for, there are some exceptions, and you can't add these into your calculation for the diversion, whatever formula. So there's municipal solid waste, and then there's like construction and demolition waste.
Mhm.
So that is separated out. There's something also called industrial waste. Industrial waste is not part of MSW or in that calculation of diversion rate that the EPA has guidelines on. So this is specifically talking about just your general, not like a storm happened and then all of a sudden we, had to clean up, hundreds of trees, and now we're counting that towards municipal solid waste. That would also not qualify. For some reason, the EPA, I've always had a question as to why, but for some reason, when you do home food waste composting, we can't add that
That was kind of my
towards the diversion. I think some communities still try to calculate it, and some communities like Seattle area, and like that's where I've had some knowledge of their kind of data tracking, but it is hard to know exactly how much, right? Somebody's handling at home. But no, I appreciate that question. So this is really everyone as a whole, the community as a whole, not our operations solid waste.
Are the metrics based on what goes into the cardboard dumpster or what goes into the blue bin, or is the metric based on what actually gets recycled?
The measurement is on tons as it goes through a scale.
Yeah.
So,
So you're not measuring what actually gets recycled, you're measuring what could be recycled. Be nice to measure what actually gets recycled.
so what, the measurement, let's say for single stream recycling for the city, it's really when our truck hits the scale coming into the facility and then out, they get this ticket that says, this is how much the difference between your weights are, and this is how much you dropped off. There is a small percentage of that recycling that never even makes it to a third party, or, doesn't go downstream for recycling, because it is, that facility does generate some trash that goes to the landfill. How good as a community we're doing in making sure that we just place what's acceptable in those blue carts is really important. And we have a lot of, by the way, that's all tied as well to this KPI, only because we also want to educate folks not only to put the right items in the recycling bin, but that maybe there's some who aren't recycling and throwing a lot of stuff away in the trash, and then, trying to say what the difference is between the two. Some people are just confused, and we need to continue that education. So we do have the percentages based on our waste, not waste characterization. We do like an audit every year, and so we know through that audit, like what percentage of our loads, of our audit loads were cardboard, what's, aluminum cans, what's, the plastics are all separated out, and then what percentage is considered that that goes to trash. So we do have some information there that we could potentially, look at to, reduce or whatnot from some of the calculation. But this is the way that, in comparison, peer-to-peer communities, this is the way that it's being measured. It's the tons at the scale.
And I think, just to answer your question, maybe directly, we had been presented in the last year, I believe, of how much the plastic actually gets recycled and how much the cardboard gets recycled. And so she has those values also.
Just in terms
addition
of
to that,
people
so.
getting on board with this, I mean, the numbers I've heard are like 10%. And when they're 10%, who cares whether you throw it in the blue bin or the green bin?
Because we're much better than that.
Yes, and that's the thing, though, get those numbers out there, because I don't know what those numbers are.
You're saying 10% is being recycled?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, no, yeah.
Those are the numbers you'll read in the
Okay.
paper, that
Okay, no.
10% of the plastic that goes in the blue bin actually gets recycled, because there's no money in it right now. It's very difficult to make money on recycled plastic, especially for things like plastic bags and that. So I think it creates a disincentive for people to care if they don't think anything different is happening. So if we have those numbers,
Yeah.
and if they're not 10%,
Yeah, no.
get them out there.
And that's all education. I will also clarify, so the city of Lawrence does have a contract with Ham Waste Services for the material recovery facility, and in no means can they just trash our material because they weren't going to make money, or, there's a contract in place for a reason that we need to sit down and talk at the table if for some reason there's a waste stream that is not that nobody wants to buy or nobody wants to take. So, we came close to some of those discussions a few years back with some of the plastics that were really, really hard. Nobody wanted to take, and obviously nobody was paying for or buying. So we had some conversations there, and there was storage of this material for a little bit. Up until that situation resolved itself, and once again, Ham could move the material for the city. So there was some temporary storage for a while. But what you're telling me is right in line with, we just need to tell our story better, because we don't. And we need to educate the community, what's being recycled, what it's going towards, et cetera. But that's all good feedback.
I just want to clarify, because there's no data. Is it because it's a new KPI that we don't have data on there?
Yes, we just threw it up there, like literally a
That's what I figured.
month or
Just wanted to
something.
make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and really, the staff was still, making sure that this was a KPI that, could move forward. As I mentioned to the former board, the process with the KPIs, because this is led also by the commission, so they're really the ones that approve changes to KPIs. We've taken KPIs in the past to them for their approval. So this one has not gone through that process like Nancy had asked earlier.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I know we need to get going on other ones, but just to clarify the earlier question, so when we're crafting policy, I feel like the wording of these KPIs matters a lot, because if household food waste composting policy across the city doesn't go into the metric that determines how successful we are at waste reduction and diversion, then we probably, and that seems like a pretty reasonable path that a lot of other cities who have good programs are doing, we should probably craft language that allows us to count all of those efforts, particularly if those are cost-effective policy recommendations compared to large infrastructural change. And if you have more diversion at the household level and you're measuring it at the scale, it's going to look like the ratio of waste to recycling is going to look worse. So I'm just flagging some of those things. Maybe, I know Nancy already talked about shifting this a little bit to include reduction, but that's a concern of mine too.
So, I ask all of you, what would you change this to with, here's some I guess, some parameters, is it can't be a very lengthy or wordy KPI. So some of these KPIs that you're like, wait, what does this say? Or, maybe it's not covering everything that you believe should be part of it. It's not stated. It's because we've had to really cut down the language and just make them not a paragraph long. So if you can, please give me ideas of how you would reword this one. And yeah, that would be super helpful. And then also, the reason why I'm bringing these up, again, whether this one moves forward or not, as like a focused KPI, you all know we already have a contract in place with Burns and McDonald. We're going to be working on a solid waste master plan.
Yeah.
Regardless of the, focus, we've already allocated the funds and we're going through this process. So if you have ideas of, now think of your role. Your role is to advise the commission on policy, right? So then start thinking about what policies, and this is not a discussion like, tell me all your policies now. This is think about it over the next few months. Like, what kind of policy would you recommend that would make progress, that would, divert more tons from the landfill or minimize the amount of tons that this community generates in the first place?
So I think that it could just be as simple as solid waste that is diverted, recycled, composted. I don't think that it needs to be more wordy or have all the individual stuff in the statement there. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think that while I agree that obviously diverting or preventing waste should be the goal in the first place, I'm just kind of not sure I understand how that would be factored into this, because with the example of the plastic bag ban, do we for every year after that, look at the year before and decide that this is how many plastic bags we had and then always credit ourselves with having prevented that? Or is it only the next year we say that we saved on that amount of waste? Does that make sense? I guess how do you, because it wouldn't be ideal to say that the next year, oh, we made this one policy change of the plastic bag ban, so now we've prevented that waste. But then if that isn't on the metrics going forward, then it looks like, oh, then in year 3 we didn't do as well because we didn't have that one big shot. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't understand how, I don't understand if someone has a better idea of how the prevention stuff would even, I think it's a good goal, but I don't know how it would be factored into the pounds that would eventually go on the graph.
So something I had mentioned earlier, I like it when it's a KPI that actually has some guidance on how to measure. So the EPA definitely has some guidance, and actually there's other recycling organizations that have been talking about this process for quite some time, and we've been even talking to a few folks about the process. But this is a type of key performance indicator that other communities have. Okay. So this one's not unique. This would not be unique to the city of Lawrence. And in my response to you, I would say that it would be great for us to kind of get on the phone with some of these communities that measure the waste reduction piece and how they're doing it. The EPA guidance is on the recycling, diversion. So that's not going to necessarily address the minimization of solid waste. But I do think that, this is an opportunity for us to do some research and find out if there's best practices on how it's being done in other communities. Because I bet you we're not going to be the first ones. It's already going on, this type of activity. We just need to connect with the right people.
Okay, thank you.
And if you guys have suggestions on, if you know of a community or a resource that could really help the city, please bring that forward. That's the type of stuff that we would love from you to help with. The other thing, just that tie in with this one, is one of our strategies and goals in our just recently adopted Adapt Douglas County, a climate action and adaptation plan. So one of them is related to solid waste, and this one relates to the solid waste management plan for Douglas County, which obviously we're a part of. And just so you know, as kind of parallel to the city of Lawrence going through this process with our solid waste master plan, we're also going parallel with the full Douglas County solid waste management plan. So it includes Lawrence plus the rest of Douglas County in this management plan. And the county is working with the same consultant. So I think there's going to be obviously, information that that can be pulled from our solid waste master plan into the larger countywide plan. That countywide plan, the solid waste management plan, is a requirement from KDHE. So every year we have to submit an update to KDHE, and every 5 years is kind of a bigger update. So every year is just filling out a form pretty much. The 5-year one is a little bit more in depth of addressing things like how are we minimizing waste and what are we doing to reduce what's ending up in the landfills. So those are big portions of that plan that's required by KDHE.
So I have two comments. One is if we have a consulting firm that's being paid, shouldn't we postpone doing anything until we get their plan and then respond to that? And then second of all, the other thing that we could add here is focusing especially on plastics and reducing plastics, not just all solid waste, but especially plastic waste.
Okay. How do you all feel about the comment with wait till the plan is complete and then respond to it?
When is the plan complete again?
It's going to take, I believe it's 18 months. By the way, these top focused KPIs are for like 2026 and 2027. So we're talking about budgets and some activity. So the plan's starting now and will continue through 2026. I will tell you, there's a component of that plan where the community is being asked for feedback. So I kind of, in my head, I find it hard to think that this, that this board would not, kind of maybe participate in the process of.
No, I just thought if they were coming up with a plan by themselves and giving it to us, then we should react to it rather than coming up with something separate from them. But if it's interactive, then that's a whole different story.
Yeah, and just for clarification, so when we contract with a consultant, that doesn't mean that they go off and do the work and come back 18 months later and give us a plan. This is a series of many, many meetings and information that is transferred from the city to the consultant to analyze. They talk to staff within the collection area, and there's going to be conversations about household hazardous waste, about the composting facility, the contracts we have in place, the landfill that we have a contract with, and the life expectancy of it. That plan is supposed to be, I believe it's like 10-year plan. I think at one point we were thinking about maybe longer, but we went ahead and just capped it at the 10 years, just keeping it a little bit more with immediate activities that could happen.
I'll rescind my comment then about waiting, because I was thinking that was just they were going to come with a plan, give it to us, and then we'd react to it. But if it's interactive, then we do need to participate.
It's interactive. There's going to be a community engagement component. So the whole community is going to be able to engage in it, in the process.
Okay. Then I would suggest that this board in particular have the opportunity to engage with them. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other just questions as you're hearing about this one? I know some of you probably want to process and think about it some more, and then maybe the next month or so. Oh,
We
I don't-
recognize now or at the end?
It's up to you, so obviously that's not the end of the conversation of agenda number 1.
Okay.
But if you do want to have public comment, so it would be 3 minutes, not for every one of these KPIs I'm going to talk about, but all of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't we wait till the end of the KPIs, and then we'll give Dawn 3 minutes to respond to all of those.
Yeah. Sounds good. Okay. Well, again, we're going to have a lot of conversations on these, so please don't worry. Okay. So this one that apparently has no number is percent of all construction above or at energy code. So we had a little bit of a conversation about this one. This is the one I had mentioned, how this is not really an environmental sustainability measure. And the reason is kind of the metrics behind it. And I know you were all very curious, like how does the city come up with some of these numbers? So the way it's being calculated is basically the year that the city adopted the energy code, and then and it got split into 3, residential, commercial, and industrial. So how many houses have been built since the energy code? How many commercial structures, construction have taken place since the energy code, and how many industrial? So it's just a count of how many since this energy code. There's no measurement and really hard feasibility for all the other houses and businesses that I've already built in Lawrence to comply with the energy code. Oh, by the way, the energy code is part of the building code, which is required. So it's not like a business could build their facility in Lawrence and not comply with the energy code. So it really is a measurement of everyone since the energy code was adopted in Lawrence and keeping those numbers. So the folks, my understanding is even if somebody was able to spend a whole bunch of money to, redo their installation in their house and do all these things to meet the proper requirements of the current energy code, there's not a way that the city can track that number, right? So ultimately, everybody was kind of having a little bit of heartache with what we were really measuring here. And the idea behind this one, I think when the community was talking about it, is how does residential, industrial, and commercial kind of reduce their impact energy-wise? The energy code absolutely deals with good insulation, things like that, to make efficiencies within these facilities. So with that in mind, and I did pop up, this is one of the, it looks like 2012 report on our greenhouse gas emissions. And this is kind of the years through since the beginning of the measurement. So you can see that for kind of energy use here, industrial is the green, commercial is red, and residential is blue.
Mhm.
It makes up most of our greenhouse gas emissions, right? Buildings do. Here's another graph of it. So contributions to community, again, this is not talking about our operations solely, it's about the whole community. The community's GHG emissions by sector. So again, this part of the pie, 31% is residential energy, 35% is commercial energy, and industrial energy is 16%. So it's, again, the majority of the pie is kind of these folks, which is where the conversation was kind of coming about, like how can we be more energy efficient as a whole. So this is one that we wanted to move forward in focus area with some rewording. So again, I ask you all for, your expertise and some of you I know are stronger suit with the energy conversation, the energy area. So we were wanting to reword this to kind of measure a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from that residential, commercial, and industrial part of that pie. Right? So this one doesn't deal with the transportation or the solid waste piece of the pie. This one is about a KPI that is focused on, which basically also goes down with the same type of strategies or activities that were being talked about with the energy code one. So what can we do to make residences more energy efficiency, and even, on the commercial side. So what do you guys think about that? So measuring kind of a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by activities. So think about it too. You're a policy board. What kind of policies could the city of Lawrence pass? And in this area, there are a lot of things this community can do. There's great examples from multiple communities. I'm also a little bit sad that Mohsen could not make it to this meeting with you all. He does have, and has worked on some great research on energy efficiency, especially concerning like multifamily and rentals, which Lawrence has a big amount of rentals versus, just owner occupied home.
So you're asking about the language change. You want our suggestions for that particular one, instead of it being construction, to encompass all of those sources of greenhouse gas emissions, rather than that?
In this example, construction means that residential, commercial, and industrial. But we're not measuring this, the new KPI wouldn't be measuring at the point of construction, right? Like how a new commercial facility is more efficient than maybe one that built in Lawrence 30 years ago. It's really about, this is our greenhouse gas emissions for our community and how can we reduce it? And the biggest section, or the biggest emitters of greenhouse gas inventories are our facility, our buildings, all of those. So really, and I can take a stab at, I know we, when I met with the outcome champions where we were kind of wording things out as well, I really wanted to ask you all, if you had thoughts in this area. And if this one feels, it seems like it's probably of the three I'm going to talk about, the biggest impact. As you all saw, if we're really talking about what can we do to move the needle, like, even considering our climate action and adaptation plan. So solid waste is great work, but it's, as you can tell, a very small piece of the puzzle if you're talking about greenhouse gas emissions of this community, right? So I have a hard time kind of leaving this one behind because I think this is an area where we can make really big improvements. There's a lot of policy that could be discussed and kind of sorted out for possibilities for the city of Lawrence.
Isn't that pretty easy to measure? Between Black Hills and West, whatever they call themselves now, you basically know exactly how much electricity and how much natural gas is being consumed. And you can convert that directly into CO2 based on where the electricity is coming from and burning natural gas. So it seems like as a total number, that would be a very simple number to come up with. Is that not correct?
I think that would be a good idea. And they also, the electric company also has data on how much they purchase for
Right.
household electricity. So that would be a good number to use too.
But it does seem like one where the metrics are available.
Absolutely.
Where in other cases they're not.
I do want to comment, so we do have great relationships with our utilities. They're partners, we're partners with them. But getting data from them is not that easy. I just want to set it, we have been able to get data in the past, not very specific or broken down data. That gets harder when you want more specific data, but they have come through with some of that information that we've needed for our greenhouse gas inventories in the past. But it's not easy for them either, because they don't just have, they're not tracking this by, the same way that we want to report it out to the community or whatnot. They're really just have all these customers, and for them to group the data or to give us a breakdown is not always something we receive as easily.
I just want to say, in terms of leaving behind an energy code specific KPI and moving to a broader energy efficiency goal, I like that more as a policy board, because then we can get into, like you said, we can talk about climate resiliency, we just had an extremely cold period, and you can actually provide policy recommendations that go to older homes that are actually, from an equity perspective, probably need improvements more than new construction. So that's just one element, but then you can get into solar panel. It's so broad, and it's a good target that we can get creative and find solutions. So I like those types of goals better than things like this, which are so niche.
Yeah. And I did want to also just clarify that energy code doesn't drop off of the effort of this KPI. So one of the reasons why it's also kind of good timing is because it is on schedule for our Planning and Development Services Department to start the process of an update of our building code. So they just wrapped up the Land Development Code update, and this next big project they're going to tackle is the update on building codes, and they're looking at 2024. So where we skipped the 2018 version, we're going to 2024, which is also would match up the energy code of 2024. So those are going to be some, again, community conversations, and I think a lot of opportunity to, I don't know.
It still impacts energy efficiency.
Yes, absolutely.
So you suggested that you could take a stab at drafting these. After this discussion, could you take a stab at drafting them and then bring it back to the next meeting, and we could all then work on that, and at the end of the next meeting, then we could have some final suggestions for you.
Absolutely.
On these three.
Yeah, and if you just want to, also, I did take down some notes of some of those comments of things like you really wanted to see in the KPI, like the waste minimization, not just, increased recycling and composting. So these are all helpful for right now, and then I can come back with some of those language changes.
And so I think you were saying we want to say reduce greenhouse gases in households, commercial and industrial sectors.
Energy specific, right? There's specifically energy usage at the household, what you had for GHG.
It's energy usage.
Right.
Yeah.
So those are things you already have the metric for. A broad base to pull policy from.
Yeah.
It seems like a great metric, because you can track it and you can tackle it from many different angles.
Yeah, and like you said, we can come up with some policy suggestions.
Yeah, I like that. And so something similarly broad that's measurable for the waste would be great in terms of the wording change, because then we can again be as creative as possible in policy recommendations.
Yeah. I appreciate this feedback, and again, we will be giving you some updates too as the building code update process gets started. I think it's important for you all to know as that gets underway. Okay, so one more. How are we doing with time?
We're done at what time?
It's 6:53.
I have just, sorry, I was just thinking in my head, how can you simplify the metric for waste? And I think something similarly where you're actually just tracking total amount of waste going into the landfill is simple enough, because you can either reduce that through diversion or you could reduce that through reduction. So again, if you simplify the metric, then we can get more creative. So maybe that's a solution.
I did want to mention that with, let me go down here, with solid waste, so we don't want necessarily our city to stop growing, right?
Yeah.
Do per capita, but.
You could do per capita.
So
yeah.
the way that, I mean, I know the state and the EPA reports it, and Lawrence has done this too, is the calculation of how many pounds per person per day, or, you know, just.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like
It's
that,
not really
though.
just about the tons headed to the landfill, because we do want growth, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I like that, that solves the problem, and it gets away from the percentage conversation, which gets so messy.
Yeah. I still want that wording plastic in there.
Yeah.
Because I think focusing on plastic reduction is really even more important.
All right, so the third KPI that I did talk to the outcome champions is this one. It's split into three again. It's CC 12, and it's split into three because it got split into electric, natural gas, and biogas, and then the fleet fuel. But the actual KPI was worded % of city-used energy that is renewable. This one is particular to just our operations. This is not the community at large. So I do want to, I've moved on to a different outcome now. This is connected city. So this is more reflective of our operations. And what we're tracking here is, yeah, how much of our electricity is renewable energy, how much of our natural gas, and then here's the fleet fuel. And there's been some issues with the measurements of some of these, but I just want to talk about, instead of getting in the weeds about that, I want to talk about the reasons why to move this one forward. And it really is something that I need your help on, right? Number one is we just recently received approval from the City Commission to open up Ordinance 9744, which is the city's renewable energy goals, to revise that ordinance. And we not only did we get the approval to open it up, you know, staff's going to be working on it, but we also said that we wanted to work on it with the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Board and the Connected City Advisory Board. And the commission said absolutely. So all three of us, you know, are going to be working on revising and then giving it back or presenting it back to the City Commission for their feedback and input, and then approval of the new version. So that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask a question. With the way they want it to be changed, is it to include policies that would achieve the goals that the previous ordinance had? Or is it just to change the goals of the previous ordinance?
Just the simplified response to what they asked for is they left it open.
Okay.
They did not say, this is where you have to take it exactly, or these are some parameters you need to be aware of. They really left it open for us.
Okay.
They also did not specify a time frame when it comes back to them. But obviously, we do not want to keep this ordinance that we wanted to update, you know, still not updated for 3 years from now, right? We want to actively be working on it, which is what we said we would do. So just I'm thinking about that ordinance 9744, and it's part of this KPI, right? That's the policy that speaks, one of the policies that speaks to this KPI and the measurement. You know, some other information as to why towards the end of last year, we got the great news that we were, our application for our EECBG funds had been approved. So it's 147,000. So again, budget, when we have budget, it's good to work on this stuff. So it's 147,000, and it's not money that the city was going to receive. It's in the form of technical advisor, technical assistant, who was going to be appointed by the DOE. I don't know if say is or was at this point. Sorry. So appointed by the DOE, we get paired up with this technical assistance, and the deliverables for that, those funds was an energy plan for the city of Lawrence. So we don't have an energy plan. What great document to have for all of us to kind of look at and be able to know where we should, work on policy when we have the data in front of us. The second thing was kind of a feasibility study on solar for all our city facilities, so, City of Lawrence municipal facilities. And the third component was also a study on electrification of our facilities. Like, what would it take? What, are there some facilities that, that transition could happen easier than others, and so forth, and just kind of having that expert advice given to us in a form of a report, so that we could then move with activities and actions based on that. A big portion of an energy plan, as you know, is energy efficiency. So even like the part of auditing some of our facilities, again, we've done this in the past, but doing it again and finding more efficiencies, what can we do to improve our facilities and so forth. Now, I say that was, I'm not sure, as of today, I still am not clear, and maybe we won't get clarity for a while, if this program is still moving forward or not. I do have some colleagues, sustainability directors in other cities that have informed me, because they had EECBG meetings already scheduled for this week, and all of those had been canceled. So again, not sure what's going to happen, but I do want you to know that, when we had received that piece of news, we, we're excited for it to help us with this KPI. Work on this KPI can still continue. I just kind of wanted to mention that as an update. Okay, what questions are there with this one?
I guess I know I'm speaking a lot, sorry.
No, you're good.
A concern I have is with these split into three things, and again, being so specific, it's going to be rather difficult to provide policy recommendations, from my perspective. And I do wonder if this is another case where we could craft a metric that makes our jobs a little easier to track and recommend things.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's consolidating it, or again, to me, a move to renewable energy is a solution to meet a goal,
Mm-hmm.
or to meet a few different goals. So I wonder if this can be simplified like the other metrics and just say reduction in city,
Non-renewable?
or just reduction in city energy greenhouse gas emissions, because then you can make other changes to city infrastructure that aren't renewable energy changes that can be just as effective, maybe more cost effective, don't require infrastructural changes. So I don't know, I'm playing,
Or
putting that
just
out there.
percent city used energy that is renewable.
That also,
Because
it makes it easier.
natural gas and biogas is not really renewable, but we could switch from natural gas to electric. But as you said, electrify everything, and or move in that direction. So rather than have them split into two,
And
what
they,
you're saying is to
here's the
condense it.
third one too, by the way. The reason why all three are here is because the ordinance 9744, which you all probably know, the former Sustainability Advisory Board worked on that policy and got it passed through commission in 2020. So that one, when they talk about renewable energy, going to 100% clean renewable energy, it's not only the City of Lawrence operations, by the way, it's community-wide. So that ordinance hits on both. This KPI is just for the city operations. But they define energy as, or they did at the time, as electricity, natural gas, so all of it, transportation, that sector. So some communities you see as like a renewable energy goal, but it's just hitting on electricity use, right?
So here, I think it makes sense to keep the fuel separate from buildings, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because that's the way it is in the ordinance. It
Yep.
would make sense that you have those two things separate, because they really are very different in their approach. And we've already had that great consultant come in and make recommendations on our fleet,
Mhm.
the city fleet, which would be really separate from the buildings.
Separate, but also not separate.
Yeah.
So if the city has limited funds, if we have a limited budget to make an impact in terms of this measurement, is it best to, purchase 5 electric trash trucks? Is the impact of that? Or should we put that money towards our facilities? And that actually was a question that was raised by Mosen at during that presentation, that we need all those studies together to understand the bigger picture and not all of these in silos, because you all know we have limited budget funds, right?
But the way it was already structured was, the fleet was, you already got that input from the outside council, right, on the fleet. So that is separate. It's not as if we're going to redo that whole thing, right? You always put a whole lot of money into that consultant.
Yeah, so absolutely, the study has been completed. It went along with the presentation of the update of ordinance 9744. So changes could happen to the way that we handle our fleet electrification in the future based on what our ordinance and our goals change to.
Okay.
So that's not set in stone, just because our consultant completed it at that time, and that, those are all subject to change. At that time, they said, there's closer feasibility that light-duty vehicles could be electrified by the 2035 deadline of that ordinance.
Yeah.
The heavy-duty, not so much, or specialized vehicles. So, but that's still all in conversation. It was a good amount of work that was pulled together about all our fleet vehicles. But yeah, I wouldn't say that it's definitely, in motion the way it was proposed. They neither accepted it like, yeah, let's move on to this. They just received the report at that point and understand that it's part of the process of us working on the bigger policy issue, which was revising that ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 things. The first one, I do think it's good to simplify the measurement. I would second that. And then the second point of that is we have 3 KPIs that you probably have to narrow down to 2 or 1. And so I think this one, since it's written into the ordinance, whether you're going to change, I don't think you're going to change this being a core pillar of the things community-wide, and then municipal operations will continue to be one of the benchmarks that you're going to look at. So I think this is important to maintain, in terms of priority, along with the second KPI that we looked at, which was energy code, greenhouse gas reductions or emission reductions. And then from the chart that you showed us, the waste management portion, although it is very important, it sounds like it's just a smaller segment. So is that to say that that's probably the one that's going to get cut out of the 3 right now? Or is that something you're looking for us to suggest for you?
At this point, the the group that's reviewing the KPIs that we kind of said these should be a focus for the next 2 years, that's the city's executive team. So, and again, trying to, and I haven't seen the full report of which ones made it, which ones were discussed to be focused. So I don't know if there's an imbalance where Connected City has the majority of theirs as a priority and the other outcomes don't, or I don't know what the dynamic is with all of them together, because that's being currently worked on to put it together. But, so I wouldn't necessarily say, which ones to be cut, because those decisions might be made by others, but it definitely is helpful to hear your thoughts on which one you think of the three is the most important, or that makes the most sense for this community to be working on, the city to be working on. So that I do absolutely appreciate, because I'm going to be part of those meetings too, when we have those discussions. And hearing from you all is helpful, because maybe you all are, agree on which one is the most important, like which one Kathy should fight for, that it doesn't get off, put off the table. So.
What chart were you talking about that minimized waste management?
When we're talking about greenhouse gas emissions.
Right, but that's greenhouse gas emissions. So the
Right.
fact that it's a small part of greenhouse gas emissions doesn't mean it's not important.
Right.
Because it's a completely different section.
That's right.
And just because you don't get a large increase in driving garbage around doesn't mean that garbage isn't a hugely important.
No, that's correct. That's why I started with, of course, it's important.
Yeah.
Yes.
I should also mention, because I mentioned it with the first KPI, and I didn't with the other two, but these other two, the energy code one that's changing to the GHG emissions, and this one, renewable energy, these all hit on very important sections of our climate action and adaptation plan for that exact reason. Like, these are all ways that we can work on to minimize the emissions and make a difference. So anyway, all of them are, I would say, very connected with our just newly adopted plan. Yep. So,
Okay. I think we should give Dawn an opportunity now to comment.
I've been trying to take a little bit of notes to remember where I wanted to comment. Just way back when I raised my hand was after Nancy's comment about that the ESAB should have an opportunity to review and provide input on these changes to KPIs. But I want to go further and say that this is a conversation that should be happening with the public input, the public at large's input. I participated in the community meetings that helped to develop this strategic plan. There were many meetings at the Carnegie Center and library and various places where the community actually helped develop this strategic plan. And so I witnessed and was shocked by the lack of environmental and sustainability concerns in the end result document, because I heard many people discussing this as a priority during those meetings. So this development of new KPIs seems like a really great opportunity to kind of correct that, but that I really feel like the public should be included in these conversations. I'm so thankful for Kathy's leadership and experience through this process. But so I just wanted to mention that. Let's see, I was wondering why those KPIs are under strong welcoming neighborhoods and not under environmental sustainability on the like on the separate web page for that. So that's a question, and just so I'm not taking up a bunch of time and going back and forth, that's something I'd like to understand. This permission to open up the ordinance 9477, whatever it is, I should have it memorized by now, but that permission, like the city giving permission to open up the ordinance, I'm not sure what that even means. I'd be the first to admit that could be rewarded and be better, but like I'm wondering on what basis or for what purpose city staff gave permission to open up the ordinance. So I'm just a little concerned by that because just want to make sure that there is no backpedaling, but like Nancy was asking, like, is this to like, anyway, so that is kind of a question that I have, Kathy, is like, on what grounds or what purpose did they come to that conclusion? And then the last thing I'll say that maybe I can contribute to the conversation later about the KPI on the sustainability page where it talks about percent of city-used energy and in parentheses natural gas, biogas that is renewable. That sentence doesn't make sense because natural gas is not renewable, so there's definitely some room for improvement there, and then some others. But I'll just stop there. Thank you.
So I do appreciate the feedback about public engagement. And then the difference on the websites, I mentioned this at our November meeting, but I will again because it's still in process. So this one that I have open right now, which is Connected City, is the old format software that was capturing this dashboard and putting it out on our website. We are going to transition out of this one, and the environmental sustainability one is in the same boat. It's the old version. It even went to a different site. When
So those new ones aren't published yet?
Strong Welcoming Neighborhoods has already published theirs. Again, it's still being worked on, so there's still tweaks happening. You can see there's inconsistency at times of the numbers or not even having the SWN in front of a KPI, like this last one. So, and you can see zeros. So there's a lot of work that's still happening. But this is a new software system that the city has acquired and the new kind of reporting method. So we're working on it. It will hopefully all transition here pretty soon, especially as we make some of these changes and even highlight which ones are going to be more of the focus areas. But I do appreciate that observation that, yeah, they're not currently matching up. Oh, and opening up ordinance 9744, it kind of for homework for the November meeting, the Environmental Sustainability Advisory Board watched the presentation. It was a work session where the strategic plan environmental sustainability commitment presented on some updates, including the conversation of ordinance 9744 and kind of some of the reasons of opening it up for editing. And I'm happy to share with you the link that gets you directly to it so you can watch that. And of course, always reach out to me if you have questions after that. I'm happy to, I'm happy to answer your questions. So just reach out if you've got some additional concerns.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we better move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the letter that Kathy and I drafted that we would like to send to the City Commission. I hope everybody had a chance to look it over. If you have any comments, suggestions, we would love to hear. So this was, the issue here is the city budget is tight, they're cutting things, and we are requesting that they not cut the staff member for environmental sustainability, i.e. at this point, Kathy. For the past couple of years, the SAB, not the ESAB, had requested a second staff member, never got it. And so we mentioned in the letter that we had requested it. Now is not the time to request more funding, but in the future we would like that. But at the very least, we need to maintain one staff member whose focus is environmental sustainability. So that's the gist of this letter.
Well, I think supporting you is absolutely, so, I mean, you've done a fantastic job.
So, if there's no comments or suggestions for change, we would need to have a vote. Do I hear somebody make a motion to accept this letter to send to the city commission?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Sustain?
Yeah, I appreciate the former board's support, and then also you all. In the past, it's one of those things that budget conversations are, not a fun time. It's hard, and 2026 is looking to be, if you did attend or hear the presentation on Tuesday about what the city's handling right now for the deficit for 2026, it's a lot. So I appreciate the support. I'll work with you to get signature and get this to City Commission.
Okay, good. Let's see. The last item on the agenda is how we want to handle outside groups coming in and doing presentations. In the past, we have had people come in and give presentations, and they've gone on, and there was a lot of discussion about we need presentations to be focused, perhaps with our presenting questions we want them to address, time limited as far as their presentation, and an opportunity for us to ask questions. So I just thought it would be important to have a discussion of how we want to handle people who want to give outside presentations. And this was nudged because Dawn had asked to come to this meeting and have the presentation that she mentioned originally in her comments. So what are your thoughts?
Certainly time limits, like 10-minute presentation, 5 minutes for questions, something like that. I would prefer, especially on things like, the commons development or that, to have both sides. So if you have somebody coming on with one opinion, at least invite somebody to come on with an opposing opinion, just so you can get a better, quick idea of what it is from everybody's point of view. So I guess that would be quick, focused, time for questions, both sides if possible.
Okay. I think those are great ideas. I'd also like to see that they ask to come in, we discuss whether we want them to come,
Yes.
and approve or disapprove of that, in addition to just giving anybody
No,
10 minutes.
absolutely.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I think, and I agree with your having both sides, but I think that can get really challenging to decide who is on what side or which side somebody is on necessarily. So I think it's a great idea. I'm just not sure how we would actually implement it all the time.
I think if it's a very clearly, if there's a clear fissure there, then you could at least make an invitation. If it's not, or if it's just informational, then you
And just let it, yeah.
I think you could deal with that kind of thing on a case-by-case basis. This particular topic, I do think there's two sides to this
Sides
topic.
on this.
And I don't really know either one, so it would be
Yeah.
very interesting to hear about.
Okay. So we want to say when possible, we'd like to hear.
When possible, I think that's a great way to, if we're going to make something official, right? So that it's not like we have to, but if possible, and there's clearly another side, that we try to invite them to come and present.
Okay.
I do want to speak up a little bit from the staff perspective and as your staff liaison to kind of remind you of your role. So you're a policy board, and, some of these presentations could lead into, your crafting of some policy for sure. But you're a policy board that's aligned with our environmental sustainability commitment in our strategic plan. So be very thoughtful of that, and especially where you choose to have your priorities for the year, because you have limited time in these meetings, right? You have 12 meetings, and if one gets canceled, 11 meetings, and they're an hour and a half. So again, I hear the time limits, but I would just advise you to make sure that whatever presentation aligns with your priority within the environmental sustainability KPIs, that you're focusing on. So I'm just saying that, just to remind you of your role. And then the other, because again, then if you choose to work on some policy behind some of the information, if it's not even one that moves the needle on a KPI, again, then now we're not aligned. The other thing I would mention is, I know you put on here, you asked about outside groups, but from time to time, city staff do need to provide a presentation to some advisory boards, whether it be legal or whether it be, MSO with a stormwater report or something like that. So I just wondered if those could maybe be handled a little bit different. I know that we meet for an agenda meeting, so, and usually these staff presentations would be, with good notice, or sometimes it's the board that requests those presentations. But I just, would ask for, some, I don't know, distinguishing the two. One being, and if it's legal, talking about COMA with your board, I don't know if that's a decision of the board to say yay or nay on something like that, on a presentation like that from our city attorney's office, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Again, I think, as you mentioned, we really need to be focused on whatever KPIs we've prioritized for that year, because we do have such a limited amount of time, and we can't work outside the subcommittees as we had in the past. So I think it's really important to put that in as a priority for us, choosing whether or not we accept someone's request to present.
And with that said, too, you could ask the group that's requesting to present, how does your topic align to the strategic plan's environmental sustainability commitment?
And the ones we're prioritizing.
Yes.
Because there's plenty.
Yeah, you could say, these are the 3 we're prioritizing this year, how does it fit in with one of these? If you're not sure if it aligns or not, it's a good question to ask the group.
So for instance, the one that Dawn asked about, it doesn't hit the 3 that we focused on so far, in my opinion.
I think
Kinda
we
does.
need to let them
You think it
make
does?
the argument.
That's,
yeah, but
that's
let
my
them-
opinion.
Let
but
them
I'm
make
just
that
saying.
argument. I think we
Okay.
shouldn't judge. I think we should just say, hey, these are our priorities.
Okay.
And if you can make the argument and convince us, then we can all decide if we feel like it meets that or not.
Okay.
Is that a form that we could generate, to have it available? I mean, I'm happy to take a stab at that support, so that they just kind of have those guidelines already.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
I
can
think it
have-
would be really nice in terms of relationship and transparency perspective to, in addition to streamlining and making it easy for people to make the case on why they should present to the board, have a form letter that explains that we physically respond to that organization, saying here's why we are or are not hearing you. We reviewed your form. We don't think it aligns with our 3 priorities that the city has given us to focus on. We apologize. Please resubmit in X number of months when we redetermine what our priorities are.
When the priorities have changed.
Yeah,
Priorities may have changed.
Because I'd hate for it to just be like a no, right?
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah.
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 I'm good with that.
Okay.
What about, do you all agree with the comment of a 10-minute presentation and 5-minute Q&A?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think that's a good place to start. If we really needed to hear more after that, we could request for them to come back.
Can I clarify though?
Yeah.
Because one of the ideas was to, when possible, have both organizations or opposing sides present. Is that 10 minutes per organization and then 5 minutes of Q&A per organization in that case? Or is it the one that requests it gets 10 minutes and 5 minutes of Q&A and the other group gets to be present for the Q&A? Does that make sense?
Yes. And I'm sorry, I do need to speak up again, sorry. I'm really, as your staff liaison, I'm finding it really hard on how, if it's my role to find the opposing
Yeah.
viewpoint. I mean, if you tell me who, and if I have to reach out to somebody, and do they fill out
No.
the form as well, or is it, again, I think we need some clarification.
Practically, there's no easy way to do that, and you don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time, but
Yeah.
you could do something like put it on the agenda. So on the agenda, there will be a presentation on X. Anyone would like to make a counter presentation, please send a letter.
Okay.
I prefer that.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
prefer
a good
that
way
because
to
it
do it.
doesn't railroad an organization who wants to come next month. You don't have to wait for the other organization that doesn't want the conversation to happen.
And it
to
gives
come.
somebody an opportunity, if they're paying attention to what's going on,
Yeah.
to be able to then say, I want to present
Exactly.
my view on that subject, then we could say, yeah.
I like that.
So then, to clarify, in the past, when a group has given a presentation, they haven't always submitted like slides or a summary of their presentation prior to the day of the presentation. So if you want to open it up to, if somebody has a counter presentation, again, sometimes just the name of the group or the speaker doesn't tell somebody enough information to be able to provide a counter point of view. So would you require the organization to submit something that gets attached to your agenda, some summary of what they're going to go over?
I have a proposal. In the form that they fill out,
Mm-hmm.
we just pull language from that and put it in the agenda. So at this month's agenda, at this month's meeting, we're hearing from X organization on how their project Y meets this strategic goal in our agenda. And then that gives enough context that you could determine whether you would like to attend on where you're aligned in the issue.
So would you like to say off the bat with your form, everything that you include in this form will be, there's a possibility for it to be public? Because again, if you're picking and choosing from a form, the organization needs to know if you're going to
Yeah, no, of course.
publish that, okay? So just all of it is,
But all of it should be subject to the board's approval before, I mean, just because
yeah, so it
they-
would come to the board and become a public document.
Yes,
That's right.
Yes.
yeah, and
Correct.
then
It's a
we
good
would
testimony.
review it and decide whether or not we want
Yep.
each of these two groups to present
Okay, thank you.
at some subsequent meeting.
So really, the process, even an organization, I mean, they're looking at 2 to 3 months down the line of giving the presentation because they're going to fill out a form that comes to this board. And whether or not you approve for that presentation, you might also already have a presentation lined up for the following month or whatnot. So you're going to respond with, if you do, like, this is, or you'll tell me to coordinate with that group for whichever month or, and then make sure that they're available. There's a lot of coordination.
Yeah.
It seems like it's simple, but there's coordination, so
So
I
they-
just want to make sure.
I'd say they can submit at any time. We review and approve and assign a month at these meetings.
Okay,
And I'd say, if there's something like, is there a case where it'd be really urgent? Like, where we would have to, by email, review and.
But we
have-
can't do that, because we, right?
Oh, yeah, we can't, because it's not a public.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, the rules, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
Yeah,
still have the right to like come just give public comment if they just
Yeah.
want to bring it to our attention. So this would only be, this, to my mind, would be something where someone's like, no, I want you to have our graphs or whatever. And I don't see that being as urgent. If they still want to come make the point, they can still do so
Well,
normally,
but
correct?
They only have 3 minutes versus a 10-minute
10-minute
presentation with a 5-minute question.
Sure, but they could always get on the calendar for 3 months out, and if they're like, they can always make a brief version of their argument just to get in our heads sooner. So I would say that seems fine.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
good with it.
I'm sure I'm probably going to have some questions, but I can follow up with you, Nancy, as the chair,
okay.
just to make sure.
And Chris.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other items that people would like to bring up? What time is this meeting supposed to be over?
7:30.
Oh, and we hit it right on the map. 7:30.
Yeah, the only calendar item is your next meeting, which is February 27th
Okay,
at 6 PM.
all right. And I suppose we should adjourn?
May I have an opportunity to respond to what you were just discussing? I'm sorry to make it go late, but I'll make it quick.
Make it
I've
quick.
typed it, I've read it, I'm not giving what I was going to, I guess I'm not gonna be able to make my request tonight, but I just want to say a few things. This board is not responsible to get opposing sides or even to decide that there is an opposing side. For my request in particular, if the developer or any of the handful of people who actually benefit from that development want to address you, that's on them. And so I really think the form thing is a good idea, but I don't think that you all need to go and, I don't know, make those kind of decisions or have that kind of responsibility. The Sustainability Advisory Board was originally developed as an opportunity for public input, and its dissolution was executed against the recommendation of the Board of Boards that was making the decision last year to dissolve boards. And it was the only board that was dissolved against the board's recommendation. So I just wanted to make sure that you all have that context. And while it's nice that this body is now able to support city staff more directly, through Kathy's leadership and those conversations, it does seem like that it can be used more like a tool for city staff to use as directed, and not by all city staff, but like the executive staff or whatever. So I hope the members here will continue to listen to the public. A forum is a great idea. It can save a lot of time in your meetings, and I would recommend that the contents of those forums be included in agenda packets. And just to say that my request is on behalf of a very large group of community members. So with that, I guess I will again put my request in writing to Kathy and Nancy and see how it goes next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. Okay, now shall we adjourn? All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Second? All in favor? Aye.